Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Is contemporary medicine close to discovering the secret of physical immortality? What are the implications of such a discovery? Who gets to, quote, live forever, and who doesn't?
Well, hello there, and welcome to the 367th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. And those rather chilling questions came from my co-host and partner in the paranormal, my dad. So tonight we're going to tackle this subject with a doctor who has written a book all about it. But first, it's time for a weekly paranormal contest. So last week's question was, in what U.S. state did a couple recently sue their landlord over claiming that their house was haunted?
Well, Cecily Maras of New York City was the first to get that one right. State of New Jersey, where in the lovely community of Toms River, a couple really is suing their landlord because they claim the house is haunted. They report what to us seems like routine multiversal interactions, lights and faucets turning on and off, sounds of other people talking, etc. The couple wants their $2,500 deposit back. Now, our latest information is that the case has gone to court, but there has not yet been a decision. I could be wrong about that, but I looked it up and I haven't seen any yet. If New Jersey's court system is typical, the couple might wait for years. The house was about 10 miles away, interestingly enough, from the site of the Hindenburg airship disaster in 1937. Now, I'm not suggesting that has anything to do with anything, but it is a historical...
little fun fact for that.
It's fun facts, yes.
All right, so this week's question is, in the modern world, what scientist first proposed the idea of the multiverse as an interpretation of quantum physics? Be first to get that right and win a copy of Footsteps in the Attic, my dad's most popular book.
We do welcome callers this evening. Our phone numbers locally or from Canada, 401-766-1240, or from anywhere in the USA, 800-449-1240. Now, we rarely have novelists as guests, but James Rollins is a novelist and a veterinarian who has a solid scientific background in what he writes about. Dr. Rollins is a New York Times best-selling author of international thrillers translated into more than 40 languages. His books have been acclaimed for their originality, and in them he reveals unseen worlds, scientific breakthroughs, and historical secrets. His novels explore how advancing technology can impact society not just by the physical threats of unchecked developments, but also the spiritual and moral challenges that result. Jim has written at least one book a year since his first thriller, Subterranean, was published in 1999. He makes me sick because it takes me 5 years to write a book. Anyway, his website is www.jamesrollins.com.
So, James Rollins, welcome to Behind the Paranormal.
Thank you very much, Paul and Ben. Appreciate it.
Very good. Thanks for waiting so long as well.
No worries.
All right, so let me
adjust the audio here a little bit. Okay.
All right. No, it's fine. Just let me do this.
Okay, Mr. Producer.
Just let me do this.
All right, right.
All right, so without giving too much away, what is your book Bloodline about?
Well, in this book, it's adventure, I should say. The president's daughter is kidnapped, and it's up to sort of a covert military team to discover where she's been taken. What they discover is that the target of this abduction is not the daughter herself, but it's her unborn child, who may or may not hold the genetic key to immortality. And this then opens up the whole subject matter of really what's going on in various scientific labs right now in the U.S. and across the globe in this search or this quest for immortality, the secret key towards extending human life in a much broader spectrum than it is today.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but could you speak up a little bit?
I sure can. I could sure try.
Okay.
Okay, that's much better.
Yeah, right into the phone. That'd be great. Okay.
All right. So continue, please.
The story deals with the quest for immortality and unlocking what's going on in labs around the world right now towards this goal of reaching that barrier of reaching that ultimate goal of immortality.
All right, so what kind of thinking and research led you to your ideas about immortality?
Well, it basically started out, I was actually in a grocery store aisle, and there was some magazines on the shelf next to me, and one of the magazines was Time Magazine, and the cover article for that week was 2045, the year man becomes immortal. And I kept looking at that date, 2045, and started calculating in my head, and realizing there's a good chance that in 2045 I'm still going to be around. It just seemed astounding that we could be that close to that goal. And it sent me about a year-long research talking to different scientists in different labs both here in this country and abroad to find out actually how close we are to that goal. And what I've discovered is that there's some startling things going on in the labs right now, things that people are not aware of that are going on, and that, if anything, that 2045 estimate is probably a little bit conservative. I even touched base with some of these scientists just recently as I've begun this book tour, and a lot of them have revised their estimates up. So a lot of these goals they are trying to achieve by 2045, they're now saying are going to be done much quicker.
All right, so, well, you already mentioned that this is, like, you sort of led into the next question and how this is actually pretty close to reality, but let's move on a little bit to understand immortality. We feel that you first have to understand life. So what is your definition of life? And then that leads into another question. What we're getting at is, whatever, you can just answer what your definition of life is.
Well, my definition of life, is being a veterinarian myself, is more from a biological standpoint. You know, the physical body that we have today in this quest for immortality, of course, is how to extend this biological structure that is our body as long as possible for the biological structure expires. What happens from that point on? You know, I've written books about that in the past in regards to where does the seat of human consciousness lay. I've spoken to different scientists that have different opinions on where that seat of consciousness lays. So what goes beyond that point is not something I dealt with in this current book, though I have dealt with it in the past.
All right, so this leads more into a philosophical point of view. So that we're getting at is, Can you fully define life as a physical life?
For the sake of this book, yes. You know, for the sake of this book, when life deals with, you know, your heartbeat, your brain functioning, having an active EEG. So the quest for all these scientists in various labs is, again, trying to keep that biological entity continuing forward.
All right, Jim, here's what bothers me. It's not that I don't have any confidence in science, but I don't have any confidence in science. The world is constructed as it is for a reason, and every time we try to improve it, we foul it up. I don't know, it's like the kid who sees his moon out the window, and he tries to grab it, and he only falls to his death. I mean, it's like, I don't know, every time science gets onto something like this, it reminds me of a troop of trained monkeys coming upon a warehouse full of dynamite. The whole paradigm, not to put a fine point on it, to me seems catastrophic. I don't know, we congratulate each other with advanced degrees when our entire epistemology is based on totally insupportable assumptions, such as that life is nothing but physical. Right. In fact, we don't know anything of the kind. I mean, what say you?
Well, I mean, definitely. I mean, I have a different definition of what not just what life is. Maybe that's the problem with the conversation at this point is the term life itself. You know, I've had a whole book about the seat of human consciousness, and that the brain probably is functioning like a quantum computer, and that our consciousness probably lays in the quantum universe, where much trained science is, and where probably once we do,
that's kind of where we operate.
Shed this biological structure that our consciousness that's in that quantum sphere still exists.
All right.
And potentially can still influence things.
Okay. Well, before we even get into the more philosophical aspects of that, there are a number of practical considerations here. Overpopulation. Now, I know that I listened to a program with John Stossel the other night, and he was, saying this is nonsense. But, I don't know, from my own point of view, it seems that virtually all our problems, economic, even health-wise, and environmental, it can pretty much all be traced back to overpopulation, with the risk of oversimplifying the problems. If people are going to live forever, I mean, what does that do to the population of the planet? I mean, where does that go?
Well, that is one of the major structures that are major moral issues that I raise in this book. I always like to deal with science from a moral standpoint. Science is like a big truck, grinding forward, oftentimes beyond our ability to judge whether we should be going that direction or not.
Sure.
And that's what I love to explore in my novel. There's questions like that. If we do breach this barrier of immortality, it's not just the overpopulation that becomes an issue, which is a huge issue, as we sort of already running out of resources as it is. If we have people living a significantly longer life, how's that going to change? But also just questions about what's going to happen to the human culture itself. First of all, if immortality is possible, who's going to get it? Is it just the rich people who are going to get this? Do we begin a whole class structure based on longevity?
Sure.
And if we have an infinite number of tomorrows, what does that happen to us as human beings? Because the death, the fact that we have an end point, we have a termination point in our existence, defines who we are as human beings. It defines, why we have children. It defines, why we sort of try to do things. If we have an infinite number of tomorrows, what happens? Does the procrastination gene kick in where we, say, I'm not going to bother to do that today because I can do that tomorrow. If you have an infinite number of tomorrows, does progress become stagnate? Do people put off having children? Does boredom set in? So there's some huge issues beyond the physical fact of where we're going to put these people.
Well, you said the magic word, and that's boredom. But just before we get to that, this obviously implies that tomorrow you're not going to get hit by a freight train.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about sort of disease-free, and I understand. Maybe you can confirm or deny this. I understand, my degree's in philosophy. I'm not a medical fellow. I understand that we are essentially constructed to live about 150 years. Is that correct?
120.
120. Okay.
Because Leonard Hayflick, back in 1961, sort of determined what the maximum natural age of the human being is, and he determined that from the number of times that your cell can divide before it dies. And we have these little sort of timekeepers in our DNA called telomeres, and as each cell divides, it starts to fray, almost like the ends of your shoelaces. And so he calculated the actual number of times the cells can divide, did a calculation, and determined that the number of the natural age for a human being is about 120 years. Which, just off a little bit side target here, is that oddly enough, the Book of Genesis came to the same conclusion. There's a quote from the Book of Genesis that says that in regards to human longevity, his days shall be numbered 120 years. So it's
That's
sort of
right.
strange
Yeah.
the Bible has that same conclusion. Then all the way till the present time, to modern age, it took a scientist to come to the same conclusion. So that we do seem to have a biological clock in regards to how long our cells are supposed to survive because of these sort of time limiters that are built into our DNA.
All right. So you're suggesting that was a mistake on the part of God or nature or evolution or whoever, that we can correct?
Well, there's different theories of thought on why we have telomeres, and the biggest thing is basically to stop cancer. We made a sort of a biological trade-off not to live forever, not to regenerate limbs, not to do a lot of things that biologically we could. It's in our DNA code. It's there. We see it in other types of mammalian species and in another type of lizards. But we made a trade-off evolutionary-wise to combat cancer by putting these little time limits. Because if you have a time limit in a cell, it can only divide a number of times and then it kills cancer. So cancer is basically cells that are dividing unregulated.
That's an interesting result. Yeah, that's right.
So one of the things, we made that biological or that evolutionary trade-off in the past to make our bodies more resistant to cancer, but in doing so, we also limit our longevity.
Okay.
All right, so in my dad's books, he points out the common idea of heaven would soon turn out to be a hell just because of boredom. I mean, there was a Twilight Zone episode that was like that, where this guy who was a criminal, he died, and he was in this really awesome place, and he played craps and won like all the time. He was like, wow, this place is really boring. And then the devil's like, hey, just kidding, this is actually hell. But how would that work out for physical immortality? Would it be that same kind of scenario?
Well, that's, again, I guess it depends a lot on different personalities. Myself, in this book I posed the question, if we could live forever, would you live forever? In my case, I probably, it may sound selfish, I probably would lean towards doing that simply because I just have a very strong curiosity factor. I'm one of the guys that can't leave a movie in the middle of it, no matter how bad the movie is. I just got to see how it ends. So there's part of me that would be curious how things will transpire. But I'm also, things are changing rapidly, and in regards to overpopulation, in regards to boredom, it's hard to envision what the world will look like when we cross that barrier. Now, just use this one example. Computers are pretty powerful today, and they can do some pretty amazing things. They're pretty powerful. But current estimates say that by 2030, that computing power will be about 1 million times what it is today. That's almost an incomprehensible world. So when it comes to boredom, how are we going to be living our lives? Will we be living our lives in, William Gibson's Neuromancer type of future, this cyberpunk future? Will we be all living in virtual realities? Is there can we live multiple lives even though we have an infinite number of days? Do we divide that into different lives? We live a certain part of our life as a guy, a certain part of our life as a female. There's just so many things that can change there. It's hard to predict how boredom might set in with this new world that's cresting.
Okay, now that's an intriguing approach. Interestingly, I don't flatter myself that you've read my books, and unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to read yours because it was a rather quick booking we did here. But in our work in the paranormal, which includes all sorts of different definitions of that word, we've encountered time and time and time again. As a matter of fact, it's become a fact of daily life, what we refer to as the multiverse, in which people are already living many, many different lives, and that's reflected in our subconscious lives. And this is even from work in psychiatric hospitals that I did 30 years ago. I mean, I just immediately started to come to conclusions like this. And so the issue of boredom, as you say, may not be an issue. Nevertheless, let's ask a question. How do you support yourself for eternity? Who pays?
That's a good question. At this point, if the goal of a lot of these projects I've been reading about and interviewing scientists about has not meant simply to extend human life, but to basically increase the quality of your years. So theoretically, if you're living an infinite number of days, hopefully those are good days, good productive days where you can potentially be earning your living and being a contributing member of society. Whether that's true or not, we may be facing that sooner than we expect. Right now, we're heading towards a biological time bomb in and of itself in regards to what's happening in the U.S. in regards to the aging population. I'll just give you one statistic here. Alzheimer's is a major problem in the U.S. right now. Right now, it costs about $80 to $100 billion today to treat Alzheimer's. They estimate that the population Americans stricken with Alzheimer's will raise from 4 million today up to 16 million by the mid-century, and the cost of that will go up to about $1 trillion. So we're looking at basically a U.S. population suffering from dementia that's going to be about equivalent to the current population of the Netherlands. And we're talking about literally about 20 years from now hitting that point. So a lot of these goals of these scientists are to try to find ways of stopping that, of finding solutions to issues that result in unproductive years. So to get back to your question, if we can solve Alzheimer's, we don't have seniors that are in dementia that can be productive members of society. If we can, as some of these scientists are doing, looking to replace the worn-out parts in our bodies, so physically we're also not going to be unproductive members of society, but actually physically, it's not even better than we are today. There's some amazing things going on in regards to replacing worn-out parts. Right now, there's about 1,000 people running around with synthetic pancreases in their belly. There's about 30,000 Parkinson patients that have implants that control their disease. And that we're just cresting into the whole nanotech medical issue. We're looking at taking machines and putting them into our bodies. One of the things I was reading that in the next 15 years, nanotechnology will hold the promise of replacing vital organs. In 20 years, replacing our blood cells. Within 25 years, theoretically, even reprogramming our biological software to maybe even reverse aging. So there's the goal of this is not to have basically a large decaying population of immortals out there, but to hopefully buy better quality years, more productive years for individuals.
Well, that sort of brings up another question I have in my mind, that I'm not an expert by any means in any of these subjects, but I did take a few courses in sociology, where I had a very, very interesting teacher, to put it lightly. He was a very odd guy, but he pointed out something really interesting. He said that, from his point of view, he was saying, about 100 years ago, or hundreds and hundreds of years ago, you never heard about people getting cancer, but because their lifespans were shorter. Now that lifespans are longer, we're living long enough to get cancer and all these other diseases. Do you agree with that statement?
I totally agree with that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we probably do see a lot of dementia cases, that the average life expectancy has increased. About 1,000 years ago, the average life expectancy for people was about 25 years. And it took about another 900 years just to extend that another 12 years to 37. But the last century, last 100 years, we've seen that average life expectancy of 37 jump all the way to 78. So it took us 900 years to go 12, to bump it up 12. It took us only 100 years to bump that up, almost doubled. And that's mostly because of the advent of technology and being able to, and medicine and hygiene and that's allowed us to live this much longer. But as a consequence, we are running into more and more concerns about cancer, about dementia, about a lot of these issues that are just now beginning to arise.
So perhaps from a natural standpoint, maybe we're not supposed to live forever. That's just what I'm getting out of this. That maybe nature is keeping us short, so to speak.
There are reasons why things are as they are.
I mean, different animals have different lifespans, and a lot of it is because some of the evolutionary trade-offs that we made. Turtles live longer than us, and whereas other smaller animals live shorter than us. A lot of us, we make these evolutionary trade-offs, and so there definitely is that 120-year mark. I think is real. I think that is where we are right now as natural biological beings. That's about the maximum we're supposed to live because of just the way our bodies are built and our DNA structures. But now that we're seeing, scientists beginning to unlock even the DNA code. Right now, there's a new field of study called cybergenetics. It's the merging of basically machine and gene together. Your DNA is basically just information processes for building your body. Now, the software is, of course, millions of years old. But the cybergenetics tells the potential of actually overhauling that system, and the limits that are put into our genetics, into our biology, potentially can begin to reverse. I'm reading this one scientist that we're working on creating a stable triple helix of DNA, and that's a superstructure of two biological strands of DNA, and then they've inserted an artificial strand created in the lab called PNA. And what they found was that what they can do is that with that artificial strand woven like a snake between our two DNA, we can actually turn on and turn off genes. It gives us basically total genetic control over that genetic structure. And already they've used that type of science to begin to develop a cure for muscular dystrophy in lab animals, and they're now going to be trying to test that. So there's some amazing things coming on the forefront in regards to unlocking that biological restrictions that we just talked about. This 120-year mark, scientists are beginning to find a way of unlocking that, for better or for worse.
Okay, well, that's the question. Well, we're going to take our commercial break right now. I'll be right back on Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON 1240 AM and ONWorldwide.com in New England's beautiful Blackstone River Valley. Stay with us.
Every Paw Sox game is filled with sights you really just can't forget. There's the green of the field, the blue of the sky, the pitcher glaring in toward home plate, and the crowd whooping it up over a home run. But maybe most of all, there's the sight of your kid wearing a baseball glove, eyes big as saucers, collecting an autograph. Every game means something. What will it mean to you? Come on out and see the Pawtucket Red Sox. For ticket information, call 401-724-7300 or visit pawsox.com.
Yeah, this program is brought to you by also Amazon.com and Amazon Kindle, the marvelous reading devices that you can get that eliminate the hugely expensive trips to the bookstore and more gas in your tank and all that sort of thing. You can download over 2 million publications, newspapers, books, magazines, and with Amazon Kindle Fire, the higher-end version for only $179, I should say $199, you can get not only all those publications, but apps and games and films and TV shows and all sorts of things in living color, as they used to say. And for as low as $79, you can get the Kindle itself for your reading pleasure. It's great for anytime summer use. We're only halfway through the summer season. Lots of beach time left. So check it out on Amazon.com or at Staples or any place else that carries the Amazon.com Amazon Kindle devices. Okay, we're back and Behind the Paranormal here with our very interesting guest, Dr. James Rollins, New York Times best-selling author, and we're discussing the possibilities and consequences of living forever physically. Okay, let me just, Jim, tell you what again kind of bothers me. And I don't want to come across here like some old curmudgeon, who's just, we longing for the days of, whatever. But it's funny we're having this conversation on this show because I'm always spending time dealing with a lot of spiritualists, just given the subject of the show, is they'll come on and they'll talk about, ghosts and the spirit world and all this stuff as if the body means absolutely nothing. And I'm constantly arguing that we are not ourselves without our bodies. But in a way, we're kind of arguing here that I guess I have to argue that we are not fully ourselves without our souls, spirits, multiversal lives, whatever you want to call it.
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. And the body, just as the spirit isn't good enough, neither is the body. Let me just point this out before you respond.
Sure.
I'm always seriously bothered, maybe it's because of my degrees in philosophy, but I'm always seriously bothered by our assumptions. We assume all sorts of things, and one of the things we assume, and this comes up in UFO discussions, that the definition of advancement is tied to technological advancement. That people may have, suppose if these things are really true, they have, craft that can zoom from planet to planet, and that's advancement. Well, I think advancement should be defined at least 90% as spiritual and moral advancement. I would much rather be at the hands or in the company of people who live in huts and cook over open fires and are spiritual giants than I would in the hands of some sort of pseudo-Nazi aliens who are running around in these super great spaceships. I mean, you get where I'm going here? I am.
No, I mean, I think we're on the same wavelength in regards to that.
Yeah, because I mean, do we? What kind of arrogance does it take for people who are as ill-developed as we are, morally and spiritually, to be even thinking about this stuff? It just bothers me. And this, when we mess with nature, all hell breaks loose every single time. That's what bothers me. What say you?
Yep. I mean, basically, as it's mentioned before, like scientific exploration regularly tests society's moral compass. Is human cloning good or bad? What about stem cell research? At every turn, the fringes of science are testing a society, whether it's morally, whether it's spiritually, whether it's economically. And at the accelerating pace of this exploration, we're outstripping our ability to rein in our advancement or to adequately judge where that knowledge will take us. And I think the answer to that is what you just posed, which is without a moral or spiritual center, none of this is going to matter. If we don't strengthen our spiritual and moral center as much as science is going to run amok, and it's going to lead to disaster. I believe there needs to be some synergy, some balance between recognizing how beneficial science is. I mean, the polio vaccine, the first antibiotic. They've done some wonderful things to eliminate suffering, to save people's lives. But at the same time, you can't let scientists just run unchecked. Because basically, scientists are like mountain climbers. If it's there, they're going to climb it.
Right. If
they can do something, they're going to attempt to do it. Some lab, somewhere, someplace is going to do things, and I've uncovered some of that in this book. There's some links I have at the end of my novel. At the end of my book, I have a sort of what's true, what's not, where I separate truth from fiction. And I have some links in that where you can actually see some of the things that I'm talking about, and some of them come with big warnings. Do not watch this unless you have a strong stomach. Because some of the things that are going on in different science labs around the world right now are very disturbing. And I think what the big problem is just we stress. Sometimes we lose our spiritual center in our pursuit for scientific exploration. If we want to benefit, I think the best benefit for society today is to find that balance between that spiritual center and still going ahead and continuing with scientific exploration, but from basically a strong foundation that has a strong moral and spiritual center.
Okay, I'm relieved to hear you say that. Well, there's another big question that arises too when you bring it up yourself, and I'm very anxious to read your books. They really sound great. The issue of who decides who. I mean, obviously, you cannot take what are we at now? 8 billion people on the planet.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't do this for everybody. I mean, logistically, it would simply be impossible. Who decide? And this is an ironic question because one of the arguments against the national health care bill was the accusation that there are going to be death panels and people are going to decide who's going to die. Well, who's going to decide who's going to live? Who decides and who pays? I mean, you can't get away from who pays. I mean, we're dead broke as it is.
Yeah, we'd be like the Jetsons right now if we had the money for it.
I suppose. Yeah, when we were kids, I don't know how old you are, Jim, but when I was a kid, they were the Jetsons, and oh boy, we'll be flying around in cars, but nobody considered air traffic control. But anyway, what would you say to that? Who decides?
Well, at this point, I think that's probably the most disturbing question. I do not trust the government to make those choices for us.
You don't?
And oddly enough, no. And I'll use this one example. In China today, they're a major source of transplanted organs. And organs from one person fetch about $100,000 on the worldwide market. And China started a hidden policy of executing prisoners. Specifically, usually they're unwanted groups, like the Buddhist group, the Falun Gong, but also Tibetans, Church Christians, Muslims, human rights activists.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically turned the prisons into body farms. In 2005, the Chinese minister acknowledged that about 95% of all transplanted organs come from execution.
Mm-hmm.
So, if that's the type of decision-making going on in regards to just the wholesale buying and selling of human organs, when it comes to the wholesale buying of human life, of this quest for immortality, if you leave it to the government, it's going to be an ugly situation. And I think that goes back to the earlier question about, unless you have a spiritual moral center, it's not a guiding hand to some of this technology that's coming fast, by the way. We're not talking about things that are in the far distant future. I can tell you some disturbing things that I just learned just recently, just a couple of days ago, from one scientist. We're heading to this fast, and we're going to need to start making some decisions about just that. Who gets this gift, if you will, or this curse of immortality? Who's going to be the gatekeeper for this? I don't know.
Yeah.
At this point, is it going to be the healthcare system? I wager that's where it's going to start. When we start finding ways of living longer, it's not going to be an instant immortality. It's going to be a gradual process where we find this cure, we find that cure, we find this thing. So a lot of it's going to be dictated by who has health insurance, which is a whole issue in and of itself. And then eventually, as it gets longer and longer, it's just the government's going to become more and more involved beyond what it is in healthcare already.
Well, I have every bit of respect for you and for your information sources, but our information sources, because I know naturally a lot of flaky people are interested in the paranormal. You have to admit that. But on the other hand, there are a lot of interesting sources who tell us that official policy, and this is not within the medical community, it's within the government community, is to reduce the population. Sometimes, any conspiracy theorist might tell you that there might be extreme measures being considered. I don't know if I believe that, but that there is a realization that being able to support this number of people with the with the food supply, never mind the national healthcare system, is just going to be very daunting. So all these things that come up through the medical community have to be presumably approved in this country by the FDA and other countries, and I don't know. There's so many. There are very, very few givens here. There are so many variables that. Do you really? Why do you think it is coming so quickly with all these other factors that have to be considered? Or is it just the technology you're talking about?
It's supposed to be technology, but I'll use this one example. I think it's pretty demonstrative what I'm talking about here.
Okay.
Is that IBM right now is working with a bunch of Swiss scientists on a project called the Blue Brain Project. And what they're doing, this combination of IBM and Swiss scientists, is reverse engineering the mammalian brain down to the molecular level. They're looking at creating a virtual brain, synapse by synapse, neuron by neuron, doing a perfect mirror of the human brain, using the advancing computer networks that are on right now. When I first started my book, which is books take a while to get to print. So
tell me about it.
Doing my research, it was about almost 2.5 years ago when I was talking to these scientists initially.
And this is the book Bloodline.
Bloodline, right?
Right. Okay.
And these scientists said that they were going to accomplish this goal, this virtual brain. And what they anticipate will happen when they achieve this goal, which is disturbing in and of itself, is that when they complete this goal, they turn it on, they get it functioning. One of two things they anticipate might happen. Number one is they might spark an artificial intelligence to spontaneously appear in that brain. Or it's going to be a blank slate that they can mirror somebody's, because they're going to mirror somebody's brain when they do that. They're going to find somebody's brain, mirror neuron by neuron, synapse by synapse. And they're wondering when they turn that on if that person is going to be in that computer at that point. Now, that sounds like science fiction. Now, this IBM scientist said they were going to accomplish that goal within the next 10 years. Startling in and of itself that would be that close within a decade of accomplishing that goal. Now, I talked to Henry Markham, the director of this, back about maybe 2.5 weeks ago, just as I was starting my book tour. And he said, Jim, I've got to revise my estimate on that. And then, so when he was saying that, I'm thinking, well, he's going to push it to 20 years or 30 years, because it seems like so a astounding thing to accomplish. He goes, no, we're going to accomplish this goal by the year 2015.
Oh, my gosh.
So we're that close to something that sounds almost like science fiction, something that's just out of the realm of possibility. Raymond Kurzweil coined the term the singularity, the point where computers will outstrip humans in regards to intelligence. And
well, again, we're assuming that the scientific materialist paradigm or something like it is true.
Right.
First of all, let me give our phone numbers again here. Again, you're listening to Behind the Paranormal on WON 1240 AM. The number locally or from Canada, 401-766-1240. Or from anywhere in the U.S., 800-449-1240. Our guest, of course, is Dr. James Rollins. Now, Jim, I've actually dealt with people to whom this has happened. Organ recipients of people who have been killed in accidents, who were organ donors. Their organs were, as the word goes, harvested and used to save the lives of others. I've dealt with 3 people over the last 30 years who had the weirdest experiences with this. The organ was placed in their bodies. They immediately began to have the memories that properly would have belonged to the people from whom the organs came. They knew things that only the people who had the organs could have known, because they were dead in this reality anyway. And I'm really nervous that these people are using the instructions for building a bomb in order to build a car. I don't know. I have no confidence in Western thought or Western epistemology. It's pathetic. The limitations of this, and generations before us seem to know it. So I don't. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm being curmudgeonly.
Well, the thing is, science does a lot of good things, but with that good comes a lot of bad.
Well, because it's not a complete picture.
It equals out, because science has done a lot of good things and science has done a lot of bad things.
Well, we are the best fed, best housed, best cared for, miserable people in history.
And that's true.
So I'm glad, Jim sort of sees what we're talking about here. But
First
again,
world
I don't mean to
problems.
be, negative and complaining about this, but I just don't trust these people.
Well, I'm actually, when it comes to that story about the organ transplant and having people's memory, I believe that. I believe these people are not making things up. I think that the anecdotal evidence is pretty strong. But I also uncovered and sort of tangentially with this, it's not even in my book, but I discovered this research when I was doing this book, is that we don't necessarily know where full memory lies. There's now some studies that show that the proteins that are in our cells affect our DNA, and that some of our memories are locked in our DNA. So when you go ahead and put a transplanted organ which has somebody else's DNA in it, there's some probably memory locked in that DNA. I would not be surprised if some of those proteins leaving those cells from that transplanted organ are not triggering something. They travel to the bloodstream, up to the brain, they trigger the memory that was locked in there by the previous user of that organ. So there's actually some scientific proof that might actually exist.
Well, that's certainly possible. Yeah, physicists might say it's not. And we look at things more from the viewpoint of physics than medicine, which is also a mistake, because everybody's too specialized. Nobody knows anybody else's field. But anyway, we think that many physicists say that these things are non-local. Science, rather, memory is non-local. Imagination is believed to be non-local. But again, that's their opinion.
No, I mean, there's some. I love exploring quantum physics and the whole spookiness of that. The non-locality of events.
Sure.
The way one particle can change in a particle, half the world away can change as a consequence, though there's no connection between there. Science really, that spooked Albert Einstein. Even he was like a little bit freaked out by the.
Oh yeah, he couldn't deal with it. Yeah.
Of quantum physics. So, we don't know a lot of what's going on there. We don't know where the seat of memory is completely. We don't know where the seat of human consciousness is. There's a doctor named Sebastian Sung at MIT, doctor I have a huge amount of respect for. I'm fascinated by her research. He's working on what's called the Human Connectome Project, which sounds very much like the Human Genome Project.
Right.
What he's doing is he's trying to map out the human synaptic map, this network in our head. Basically, he wants to shed some light on the anatomical and functional connectivity in the health of the human brain for autism, for Alzheimer's, for schizophrenia. Very good goals. But what he believes is that it's in that unique synaptic map. Every time we have something new happen, we have a new experience, a new synapse will form. And he believes, and whether true or not, that this vast synaptic map in our brain is really who we are. That's our fingerprint. That's who we are. And he says that, the amount of knowledge, the amount of data that's stored in the human brain in the synaptic connection. The synaptic map has about 100 billion times the amount of information lodged in it than our own DNA does. And that's almost incomprehensible. 100 billion, not million, 100 billion times the amount of data that's in that synaptic map.
Mm-hmm.
And what he's trying to do, again, similar to the IBM scientist, is to create a functional synaptic map to understand these brain disorders. But I mean, even to this day, we don't know if he's going to be right or not. He doesn't know if he's going to be right or not.
Sure.
He may do all this thing and find out, nope, it's not there either. Like I said, at this point, there's many very esteemed biological scientists and physicists who believe that our brain functions as a quantum computer, and that our actual being, our consciousness, our soul, if you like, is not in our bodies. It's in the quantum universe.
Yeah, well, that's it. And of course, it's almost like I'm sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
I was going to suggest maybe it's not the people that need to change. Maybe science itself needs to change. It seems like it's hitting a lot of walls lately. Just from what I've noticed, at least, from my point of view, it seems like science has been hitting a lot of walls. Maybe it needs to change, as it were, and change its paradigms a little bit. Not like something more spiritual, but maybe pick up something different than. Well, yeah, I mean, like pick up something different besides Newtonian physics and things like that.
Well, I think the whole scientific method has to be rewritten, but that's for another day, I guess. But Jim, I just I just don't want this to be another, you have to pass the bill in order to find out what's in it kind of thing, because our argument would be this. In our experience with the paranormal, which has taken us right into quantum mechanics, we're already immortal. We're already living infinite or semi-infinite numbers of lives, bodies and all, in all sorts of places that are right next door, but we can't necessarily see, but we're beginning to see. And we would say that all this is entirely unnecessary, and an exercise in robotics and motor vehicle repair, as it were, that's completely without any need. So that would be our argument for whatever it's worth.
Definitely, most of science seems to be described motor repair.
Yeah,
replacing our worn-out parts. And
exactly.
My goal hopefully is that there will be some balance between ending suffering and minimizing suffering while we have these biological bodies that we have right now.
Absolutely. No, you can't ask more than that. Actually, yeah.
Find that spiritual balance and find that moral center to know, what's right and what's wrong. Am I confident we'll reach that goal? Not really.
Well, I hope you're right.
Because unfortunately, money drives a lot of our economy, a lot of the world. Money's powerful. Power is, it's that old phrase, ultimate power corrupts ultimately. I just don't know when we put the this gift of immortality in somebody's hand, what is going to happen? That's a little frightening.
It is. Well, in a way, we already have it, in our opinion, and we're seeing what we're doing with it. Well, anyway, Jim, thank you so much, and tell us about the book, about your website, where people can find out more about you, where people can get the book.
Yeah, Bloodline is available everywhere on Amazon or any bookstores. If you want to find out more about the book, jamesrollins.com. It's got some great information about this book and the previous books, but also I have a great section for any aspiring authors out there. Some tips on publishing, tips on writing, both in this new paradigm of the ebook. Great information on that. I've had some friends of mine that have a huge success on ebook publishing and self-publishing. So it's a brand new world out there in the publishing world, and I hope to have a little bit of roadmap on my website.
Oh, it's very true. And your publicist is a dear friend of ours, and I learned a lot through her about our own publishing endeavor, which didn't work out so well, but hey, it's all changing. But also, you are the author of the Sigma series, I understand?
Right. Bloodline is the 8th book in the Sigma series, so they can be read in any order.
Plenty of books. As I say, you make me sick. It takes me 5 years to write a book. Anyway, James, it's been a genuine pleasure.
It really has.
We'd like to have you back, as very soon, and we'll be in touch about that.
All been any time.
Okay, well, thank you very much again.
It's been a pleasure.
Okay.
Have a good one.
All right. And now on to our announcements.
Our announcements. We have like 10 minutes.
Well, all right. We'll do the announcements, and if we have time for some email, we will.
Okay, I'm just saying.
No, I think we have a lot of email here too. So
yes, I'm just saying we have a large amount of time.
And the sun's in my face here, so.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm keeping the camera on me, in case anyone wants to know on the internet. So the next stop on our tour of public appearances in the town hall-style meetings is Woodbridge, Suffolk, England on Saturday, September 22nd. We will present our program Exploring the Paranormal with CBS Radio's Paul and Ben Eno at the Grove House Hotel in Woodbridge from 7 to 11 p.m. Tickets are £11 per person, and it will include a full buffet dinner courtesy of the hotel, and proceeds will go to local charities. So this event will take place in a highly active paranormal area, which was the scene of the famous Rendlesham Forest UFO incidents of 1980. And Larry Warren, eyewitness to the event and co-author of Left at East Gate, plans to join us that evening. So keep in contact with us for that. So for more information and to buy tickets, visit www.spaceportuk.com/events.html, or just go to our website, behindtheparanormal.com, and look for the link to that site under What's New. So finally, my dad and I will be featured speakers at the All Hallows Eve Psychic Fair at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Warwick, Rhode Island on Sunday, October 28th. So watch for more info on these events and more at www.behindtheparanormal.com.
And again, you want to contact us through behindtheparanormal.com. You can also get information on guests, past, present, and future. And nearly 400 podcasts right now. And I should mention there has been a problem with uploading the podcast from last night's CBS show and last week's WOON show. And there might be one with 10, but we are working on that. Please be patient. People have been writing to us saying that the links are broken. We'll get them up there as soon as we can and as efficiently as we can. Also on the Behind the Paranormal site, you can buy copies of my books, which it takes me 5 years to write, subscribe to our newsletter, and you can also apply to become a show reporter as well. Now, why don't we have a few minutes here, so we are so overwhelmed with emails that we are just...
we're just going to do a month of open line shows.
We're just going to do a month of open line shows, so I was sorry to end our interview so soon today, but... all right, here is one from Chris in... Oh, no, I'm not going to read that one. That's more practical information. All right. I did want to point out that this is too long to read. However, this is...
is there an abridged version?
Yeah, all right. I'll tell you. Why don't you do this one? This is from P. Mitchell in Detroit, the great WOMC.
We should start making abridged versions of really long emails. But
right.
Hi, Paul and Ben. I appreciate your work, and I really admire your relationship. I seem to have a deep understanding of, or you seem to have a deep understanding of each other and a comfort level that I, as a father, wish I had with my son. One thing that has brought us together recently is our question about the future. Will anything really happen in December? What will happen to us? Should we just give up on all the trouble that daily life can bring? I know you don't commit yourselves to any one answer to this, and I respect that you ask people to continue to do what they're supposed to do. But that doesn't always take away the fear. Every time we turn on the TV, see either brainless nonsense like the Kardashians or Jersey Shore, or scary stuff from the so-called History Channel on how something is going to kill us all, like the Yellowstone supervolcano or Planet X or our own population. Sorry for rambling, but we do appreciate your guidance, and we have noticed your statements on the good world and some possible escape. How is that coming along?
Oh, boy. Well, a very interesting letter, Mr. Mitchell, I guess, here. And we thank you for it. Nobody really knows what is going to happen. I think we are our own best, to misuse the word prophets, because we, down deep within us, as we were having discussion about with Dr. Rollins, is our other selves living in other times, and that includes the future. I would often talk with people who are hypnotists and regression therapists about what happens when they regress people back through their so-called past lives. And I'll say, do they ever describe future lives? And they say, well, funny you should ask. Yes, they do. And there's a recognition now among these people that people are really living parallel lives. All right, as we were discussing, it works seemingly through quantum mechanics. So whatever is happening here, you're always in a life where something better is happening, or something good, and you're always in a life where something worse is happening. And that's really the best way we can put it. It's all one big you. And spiritual growth, in our opinion, is becoming aware of that in a way that allows you to keep your feet on the ground where you are, when you are, and also to realize that there is always hope, that you are never alone, that you are always loved, and that even you can help yourself from a place and a time that might be better. Now, it sounds kind of fluky, but when you look at it, you see the whole history of spirituality is reflected in that statement. Really, whether you're reading the Bible or the Torah or the whatever sacred books you're reading, the Vedas, the Quran, this is really the message that you are taken care of, and very often by the totality of the lives that you're living. All the wisdom of the universe is yours. All the sad things are yours too, but it's up to you to make the most of both. And that's essentially the message we can leave for whenever disaster may strike the world. I mean, sooner or later, something is going to happen. I'm not necessarily a believer in the 2012 thing. As a matter of fact, we're planning the week after December 21st to have our good friends, the Yerlan, who was an advocate of the Mayan calendar prophecy, and Dr. Chris Keating, a physicist who was not, and we're all kind of good friends. I have him back and do a show on sort of a post-mortem on the 2012 prophecy. And hopefully there will be a post-mortem to do. But in any case, as easy as it may sound, don't worry.
Well, the thing is, there have been a lot of end-of-world prophecies that have been going on for years now. I mean, there was Y2K, and then there were just all these things, and every time someone's like, oh, the world's going to end, everyone's like, oh, and then nothing happens.
Just love each other, stay together, and nothing can harm you. All right? Whatever happens, we're all in it together, and as Red Green would say, we're all in it together.
Keep your stick on the ice.
Keep your stick on the ice. That's all I can say. Okay, I guess we're coming down. What do we got now?
Oh, we got about 2 minutes.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, in that case, let's... well, no, we already did most of our announcements. Okay, well, again, we'll refer you to behindtheparanormal.com for the information. And
don't forget, you can become a show reporter on our site, too. So we will see you next Monday, right here on WOON 1240, and that is Monday, August 6th. And on ORWONworldwide.com, my dad and I will take the hour to discuss the human history dealing with paranormal parasites.
Yeah, that was delayed from a few weeks ago because we had so many emails. On our regular CBS radio edition on Sunday, August 5th in Boston, Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Seattle, we'll be talking with our good friend, Hollywood insider and Mensa luminary, Murray Silver, about his own ghost experiences down in Savannah.
You didn't thank me.
Oh, so yeah, every show we thank the producer. Okay, I'm taking my son for granted. Ben, you did an outstanding job as always. Thank you. Ben's been running the board here at WOON, doing a fine job, and there we are.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We leave you this evening with a quote from the 20th century American author Kurt Vonnegut. We are what we pretend to be, so we must be careful about what we pretend to be.
So thanks for sailing with us on this most interesting cosmic journey. And we still have a little bit of time.
Okay, well, let's... All right. So the show's officially over. So what did you think about tonight's guest, Ben?
He's a very, very interesting guy. Not what I expected at all.
Yeah, he kind of surprised me with his a little more balanced attitude, but there's still sort of a faith in scientific materialism and science that it just really makes me uncomfortable.
Well, they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Well, no, but I mean, you also can't, you can take the instructions, as I said, for a bomb and build a car.
By the way, that wasn't meant to be an insult towards you.
What?
I was like, can't teach an old dog new tricks. I didn't mean you.
No, I've been old since I was 10. Don't worry about it.
And on that note, thanks for sailing with us on our great cosmic journey, and that was a very interesting last-minute killing session. So, we will see you next time.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.